Hello, everyone. Um, my name is Emiliano Sanchez. I'm the COO currently for Mancala Gaming. We're a new brand, which I'm gonna explain a little bit further in a second. Part of what we're gonna do, what we're gonna talk is a little bit about the problem of player acquisition and retention from the provider's perspective. Now, to give you a little bit of background, I started in the industry back in 2008 in Costa Rica. Over there, I was strictly related with the poker vertical. That's where I started. Then I moved into the casino part. On both, I specialize in VAP and retention, quite successfully on both poker and casino. Before I actually move to the B2B side, focusing on the slot development part. In the last few years, I've been traveling extensively to different expos around the world. I've been, of course, have met a lot of people along the way from different markets, different regions, different providers, operators. Um, but at the end, there's always some kind of disconnection
iOS
between
device by
what I've
using this
seen,
section of
right?
the window toward the bottom.
Between the providers and the expectation of the provider and the operators. Um, so to give you a little bit more of what we do, Mancala itself is a brand that we started middle this year, but it was already planned, or we actually we start working on it since last year. Um, we have trying to do a balance between the classical game development, adding new trends. Fortunately for us, we have managed to find a lot of people who had experience in the industry and other people who had experience on other industries as well, create new designs, to create new models, new themes that will try to break a little bit of the mold of what we're used to see on the slots. And the same token, trying to keep this classic element as well with some of our games. Um, right now, we have over 70 games, including dice games. All of our technology is based on HTML5. That means that it supports not only every browser, but also it supports the portrait and landscape modes for mobile. We are currently developing a robust loyalty system behind it and a robust area of reporting. We have several certifications in process, including MTA, UKGC in Spain. And right now, our product is being expanded into the CIS, firstly, Latam, Belgium, Turkey, and we have other deals ongoing in different markets. Now, when we talk about the problem of player retention and acquisition from providers' perspective, most of the providers, they don't focus on this. And this is a necessity, and it's a clear focus for the operations. At the end, the players is a lifeblood of the industry. And sometimes between the expos, which we all miss, the physical expos, and sometimes between doing the business and the deals and seeing all these big stands, we forget that the players are the ones who sustain the whole industry. And that's one of the key aspects that I brought into the company when we start thinking about what we could do to help the operators. At the end, we all know that player retention is more efficient than player acquisition in terms of money. It's cheaper to do that. And on the long term, both retention and reactivation are actually key aspects of the business from the operator side. So right now, what is the base of retention and acquisition from an operation, right? So over here, I can discuss about the different parts of the business that most of us know: affiliation, marketing, CPA, social media. Then we start talking about conversion rate, retention rate, reactivation rate, the NGR, right? When we start going to see the gross numbers and the profit. And the core of all this is the data, what we can do with the data, how we can segment the data, how we can identify VIP players, how we can identify the next big player who's going to come into the website, how we can actually make the experience better for the players themselves. So we can talk about predictive analysis of behavior of the players. We can talk about real-time um, notifications to players, even to players or even to the customer service as well, right? Because at the end, the customer service, the VAP, the sales, the marketing, the focus that they have is to create a constant engagement with the customer. The engagement with customer creates loyalty. This loyalty will convert into profit at the long run. I do my own analysis on different operations that have been involved, and there is a clear correlation that the more communication you have with customers, the bigger is the profit that the operation will have. Keeping this in mind, a lot of times we forget as a provider what we're focusing on. The provider, what do they focus on? They focus on the games. They want to know if the games are popular. How do they measure that? We focus on the total spins, on the total bet, on the GGR and NGR. However, we have to understand that both the GGR and NGR for a provider is not calculated the same as an operator. The operator has costs on marketing, on people, while the provider is focusing exclusively in maybe some taxes involved, maybe on some bonuses given. They don't take in consideration the cost that the operation has. Um, how do the provider works on engagement? Well, free spins tools for jackpots is another example. What they have, tournaments, which are quite popular, of course, with the players and usually in a mutual agreement between the provider and the operator. And of course, this is a recurring theme that you always hear, quite important, which is the localization, right? You want to keep the product to be localized for the market they're on. You don't expect, for example, a player who doesn't speak certain language to play the game in a language they don't know, or culturally, you don't want to throw a game in Southeast Asia that has unlucky numbers on it because localization, the players are just not going to touch it. Then you want to measure the popularity of the games, you know, and we can always go back to all the books of right that they all come from the book of Ra, or we can talk about the classic and all the different variations of books that they are per provider. We can talk about more recent cases of mechanics like megaways, for example, which is a clear case of a well done mechanic, and you recognize that in the competition, um, especially with consolidated brands, how they manage to break through the point that you have now the trademark going around to different providers, and it's a very successful one. And of course, you have the trends. And by trends, I not only mean about the mathematical aspects of it, but I'm talking about the cultural trends that you see around. Um, we can mention, for example, the Megaways game from IGT, from Rick and Morty, for example. I believe it's IGT. And different other branded games that are very niche to a certain type of player, to a certain demographic that they like that. And they're used more for acquisition at that point. So we can think about any branded game from Play and Go, any brand, even River Gaming is doing something really good in Latin America, for example, to mention some. Um, on our case, I can mention, for example, our newest release, Zero Day, which is on the trend of the cyberpunk release of CD Projekt. And we have seen the numbers, which are doing quite fantastic for that release. Um, so the main question that we keep asking is about the KPIs. They are different, but not really. There is a fundamental disconnection between both KPIs, but direction is the same. The direction is to increase on the number of players in an operation that will in return directly increase the total bet and with time the GGR. And no matter the definition of the GGR between operators or providers is going to grow. With this said, um, we're thinking, what do we do? So us as providers, how can we help with the problem of acquisition and the problem of player retention for the operators? First of all, there are KPIs that they're never changing, but they are not matching completely. So we have already developed new KPIs on the backend level, so we can not only measure the standard KPIs of a provider, but we can also measure the conversion rate that we have, not only by geolocation, but also by language currency. We can also measure um, the return of the players, the retention rate of the players on our games as well, to mention just a couple of what we're doing right now. We have to increase the player engagement. How do we do that? Well, not only the themes and the math, but we have been developing this robust loyalty tool that relies on automation that will help you keep your players engaged at every single moment. You don't have to be watchful of customer service to give a bonus a certain time when the system will do it for you. And that will keep the player ongoing. The type of engagement that you want is an automated engagement. And there's a lot of tools who do that. And I'm not taking any merit to any of them. They're all very good. Solidix, Optimove. But on a provider level, we have the ability as well to provide you the tools to automate this bonus and increase the engagement that you're going to have. Now we're talking about the multiple features that incentivize the gameplay. We mentioned, for example, the free spins, traditional jackpots, but we're also mentioning different type of games in games that will add up to the spice, to add up to the player's experience. And we're not talking about the bonus games or the features games. We're talking about specialized type of jackpots with certain elements of gambling that will incentivize the player that can be controlled from a single point as well. When we talk about adapting to trends, we have to understand one thing. Before we talk for years about the ongoing difference between land-based casino and online casino, unfortunately, with the situation right now with the COVID around the world, the only thing that is happening is that we have seen the land-based casino convert into online. They already see the necessity that they can become a 360-degree experience to the player, where the player can take home the casino and then come back to the live casino when they want, becoming one. But the same is happening between social casino, online casinos or gambling, and iGaming or the regular video games. There are blur lines across all of them. We see increased amount of social casinos coming on. We have the case of Japan, for example, with a pachinko. We have other big brands of online of social casinos around where they are taking elements of gamification, not only with the games and continuously incentivize the player. And on the other token, we have video game companies that are taking gambling-like mechanics into their own video games. I'm not going to mention names, but I think we all know which brands we're talking about. One was currently fined in the Netherlands, but it is a trend, and we are seeing that. All these microtransactions that they're seeing around is something that we can analyze and learn from. The use of new social media tools. That means that us as providers, we are continually engaging in the different social media tools, affiliation, streamers, and forums to try to create that direct communication with the player. And I know there's other brands doing this as well. And it is a very good strategy, and it helps as well the operator at the end. Now, the next point that I mentioned, which is the inclusive gamification elements. I know it's ironic to mention gamification when we're doing games. The game itself is gamified because But when we talk about gamification elements, we're talking about being able to incorporate technologies that other companies are using to enhance the player experience. That we can have games that can remember the player and can be carried out on future stages as well. There are some games that we're preparing that will have some very interesting gamification, additional gamification elements in the games that will enhance this player experience. And the last thing, and I think is the most important, understanding of the cost and the operation. A lot of the providers, they tend to forget about all these different costs that the operators have. And on our end, we take the policy of always taking consideration the type of bonus structure, as complicated as they can be. When you start adding not only deposit bonuses, but also the free bonuses, and then you have a loyalty system, and you have points that can be redeemed or that can be transformed, all these things stack up, and they have a cost at the end for the operator. Because the providers, sometimes they don't see it. Sometimes the easy route is give a percent discount and that's it. But at the end, there work around these things to calculate it properly and come to an agreement when the operator can actually save money that can be used on marketing that translate into more players, more acquisition, that at the end is going to help the provider as well. So those are some of the topics that we have been working in the last year, that we have been taking as well from the operator experience and the provider experience to try to create tools and another way of thinking that can actually benefit the operators on the acquisition, retention, and reactivation level. So with this said, I do appreciate your attention on this small presentation of how we have been doing here in Mancala. I will also ask you if you have any questions regards to the topics that we mentioned on the games or the product. I will appreciate that very much. So if there's no questions right now, I appreciate your time for the presentation. And I guess, Heike.